get ready to sign it.
I can see looking around the room several of you know Professor Wadsworth already. Let me give a brief introduction. She did her MPA here at BYU and did so well in her classes, the professor said, you need to get a PhD. And she did at the University of Utah in Human Resource Management and Organizational Behavior. And while doing that program, she had her 7th and 8th child, twins. It was remarkable. So her research is on work and family interaction and how organizations can assist employees in managing their work-life integration. So Lori Wadsworth,
As soon as I can figure out how to stick this thing on the side.
present you with, we thank you for coming and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you very much. Well, first, I don't even know if it's on.
So it's working on the top of the power pack. Green button. or
It
green
says
light.
on.
Down.
Is that on now? Okay. So first of all, I have to tell you, I'm sort of losing my voice. So I apologize in advance. Hopefully this will help. Usually I don't need it, but hopefully this will help. As Catherine mentioned, my research is in work-family integration, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I kind of want to start with telling you a little bit about myself. Catherine introduced me. This is my family. I'm in the middle with my eyes almost open, which is about as good as we get for my pictures. I'm, as Catherine mentioned, I have 8 children, and I have 5 fantastic son-in-laws, and I now, as of about a month ago, have 12 grandchildren. So this topic of work-life integration is very personal for me, besides being a professional interest to me. And so it's something I take pretty seriously, and I'm pretty excited about it for lots of reasons. But mostly because we all have a picture, some maybe not quite as crazy as this one, but we all have a picture of what that means when we talk about our family. So I want to start a little bit. When I first started doing research in this area, we talked about work-family conflict. And we talked about the many ways that our work life and our family life came into conflict. So I want to ask you first, what are some ways that you see, let's start on this side, that your work life, come on in. You can come this way. This is perfect. So I want, from your experience, what are some things that your work life does that conflicts with your family life?
I feel like if I want to get ahead or be more successful, I have to put in more hours and take away from my family.
Okay, perfect. I mean, it's not perfect, but yes, good answer.
Yes, I feel like I give my best effort to work and then come home tired.
Yeah. So I'm not the only one. Okay, good.
Just kind of unexpected emergencies that might come up in the personal life that seems to interject itself in the middle of your workday.
Okay. So it's happened to you too. Good. Here's a list of some things that we see. Again, this is from our work life, and this is not an all-inclusive list, as you might imagine. But if someone mentioned long hours, it wears us out. Come on in. You could just walk through. That'll be easier. You're fine. No, you're just fine. Travel. Some of us travel. That might be traveling for our on business trips, but it also includes things like commuting. Might have a long commute. I have a daughter who used to travel an hour each way, so that adds on. That's a tremendous amount of time for work. There's a space in here because it's not homework like we think of when we're in high school or college. This is, we just keep working. There's stuff that has to get done. And so some of those kind of things, just stressors that are going on, things that are happening in our workplace that get in the way. And financial concerns. We might not be making enough money. We might need to work a little bit longer to make additional money. So there's those kind of financial concerns. Let's talk about it on this side. What are some things in our family life that get in the way of our work life? Anything there, please?
My 2-year-old inevitably gets car sick on the way to daycare and will throw up and then maybe late for work.
Wow, yes.
Is there a specific random one?
No, but that's a real one, right? What else? Anything else? Please. Stereotypes. Would you mind elaborating a little bit on what you mean?
Yeah, just stereotypes that we have of what a family should look like.
Okay,
Family,
okay.
or what a woman should be doing, as opposed to what they want to be doing. Just these stereotypes within our culture, within the world of what we should be doing and how we should be acting. And I feel like sometimes that clashes with work or work clashes with family.
Absolutely.
It totally messes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So we might personally have sort of an idea of what the ideal person ought to be, right? Or someone else might have that ideal of what we ought to be in.
What it should be home.
Yeah,
All of those stereotypes that just kind of interfere with what it is that you feel like in your heart you've been called to do.
yeah. Excellent. I didn't mention this, but my husband is an at-home dad, so he's raised our children from the time we were married. I've worked outside of our home our entire marriage. Every time we go to a new ward, someone says, he gets this question in priesthood. So what do you do for a living? He said, well, I raise kids. Oh, but I mean, like, what do you do for a living? Well, I pretty much raise kids. And one time when he was in a ward, when we moved to a new ward, someone in the back of the room said, maybe you belong in Relief Society then. So my husband is like, wow, okay, welcome to the ward. Meanwhile, I've had many people in various times say to me, but is there something wrong? Why do you work and your husband stays at home? There must be something wrong. And I usually answer by no, everything's fine and everything's right. But there is this stereotype of what we ought to be, and it's hard. It's hard because other people sort of portray that on us, but we also kind of get that in our own minds. I had a mother who was an at-home mom. I grew up and mom was always home. So it is. I think that's an important one. What else?
I think one of the things we run into is there's no value or validation in our culture for caregiving and nurturing.
Absolutely. It's like the comment, so what do you do for a living, right?
Yeah.
And my husband, I have to tell the rest of the story. My husband said, because we're kind of snarky this way, but he said, well, don't you think what your wife does? As he got to know people, don't you think what your wife does is valuable? Well, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, like working outside the home. And it's that sense that there is no value. And so I absolutely. Other things, please.
There's the saying of no success compensates for failure at home. So that being just the massive amount of guilt.
Right.
The possibility of failure somewhere.
So I'm going to ask, this is going to be a personal question. Have any of you had any failures at all in your life? Can you raise your hand? Okay. So let's just start by we've all had failures, right? But you're right. Because then what happens is we blame ourselves and say, well, what did I do wrong, right? Yeah. Did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, so she had mentioned, like, something comes up, the kid gets sick or whatever, and I inevitably am the one who's like, oh, well, I'll take care of it. And my husband, you have to work, and I'll figure out a time I can work later at home. And that's an interior, I think,
Yeah.
or an personal
Internal,
stereotype
yeah.
that I set for my
Yeah.
self.
But that's kind of your responsibility. Any other thoughts before? Here's some that I've listed, and certainly not all of them. You'll notice finances is on both lists. You probably know this. The research shows pretty strongly that the number one problem that marriages have is finances, one way or the other. And it's not just marriages, it's families in general. Issues with finances, usually not enough, but also how we use them. So that it's on both sides. Family issues, I've got a whole bunch there. Health. When we have health issues, whether it's our 2-year-old throwing up, which just sounds awful to me, or whatever kinds of health issues we might have. Relationships that we have. As women, relationships are very important to us, and we tend to put a lot of energy, and if things don't go well, we tend to take on a lot of the guilt for that not going well. Difficult decisions. Things like, what about that job promotion? What about, we've got a child who's sick, who's going to take care of them? There are a lot of things going on, and those kinds of decisions then bleed over spill over into work. And sometimes our personality. Research has shown that one of the best ways to manage this is hardiness. You guys familiar with the term hardiness? Hardiness is just the ability to make it through tough things. Well, gosh, don't we all want that? How do we come up with it? A lot of it is understanding and being patient with ourselves. But we're going to talk about some specific things we can do to help us be a little more hardy. And that's H-A-R-D-Y, although H-E-A-R-T-Y is probably good too. But how we can be a little bit more hardy in the way that we respond to tough things, because tough things are going to happen. So we early on, we talked about work-family conflict. Then a lot of people, myself included, said, and maybe out of some sense of wanting to justify ourselves, but said there's got to be something else going on there. And so we started to look at what we call work-family enrichment. The idea that things come from both sides and enrich each other. So we actually do better because we work. There's some positive spillover. The previous slide, work-family conflict, is all about negative spillover. Something happens in one aspect of our life, it negatively impacts the other. This one, and part of that is things like on work-family conflict, I don't have enough time to do, I can't be in two places at one time, right? So there are some things that conflict. But here we're suggesting that there are things that benefit me from one domain that then positively spill over to the other domain. One of the first is what we call energy. And just like it sounds, if I have a great day at work, I go home and my children actually benefit from my great day at work. And vice versa. If things are going well at home, that positive spillover then comes into the work, and I'm a better worker because of the great things that are happening at home. The other is development. Things that we learn in one aspect of our life help us be better in another aspect. There are things I've learned in the workplace that help me when I go home, and hopefully I'm a little bit more organized. It doesn't always work out, but there are things that I can do better in my home life because of what I'm doing at work, for example. So we're talking about some positive. Anybody have an example of a positive where you've seen this happen in your own life or someone else's life?
I have a needy child, and if I were home full-time, she wouldn't get to grow as much because I would rescue so effectively. Instead, because I have an important responsibility at work, I have to say no to a needy child who has now learned over the years to be very strong and self-sufficient.
I love that example.
I think work gets great.
Yeah, I love that example. Please.
I'm going along that even if you don't have a needy child, you can have a very independent child that doesn't want to doesn't want to be told what to do. But if you say, look, I have this and this and this, and I have to get done, I need you to step up and help mom out with some of the cleaning and other chores around the house. I need you to help me out because I'm not going to be here. I find that it doesn't matter. Your children need to learn how to work, and we can't coddle them to the point that they go off to college and don't know how to work a washer or dryer. That happened to my younger sister. Freshman year at BYU, because my mom gave me a laundry basket when I was 8 years old, and it kind of babied the younger one, and the younger one went to college and didn't know how to use a washer and dryer. And so I don't want that to happen to my children. I want them to learn how to work and how to step in, and I think it's sometimes good for them to have those responsibilities.
Take on the responsibility, yeah. Others, please.
It's a little different, but for my work, we just did our strategic planning conference or retreat for the next 5 years for
Wow.
5-year goals, whatever. We learned about so much things about reaching goals and how to plan, figuring out what your needs are. And I was like, I can do this in my own family. Yeah, I can do my own comprehensive strategic plan to plan out how we can be more productive and more efficient. I thought that was a really cool.
I love that, right? So something that works in the workplace, we actually can have some application of it in our home life. Absolutely. Was there another hand? Please in the back and then here.
So two things I've noticed in my balance is, one is, so in my family I'm very organized, and that has spilled over into work, and that's helped me receive promotions and be successful. And then also another, I don't know if this
Mm.
because before I could kind of take on the whole load and even like the mental load. You guys know what I'm talking about, like always like thinking of things and trying to make your family better. And now we've kind of been sharing it more, and it's been awesome for our relationship and for our family. So,
Great examples, great examples. Desiree?
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, in family, you have lots of opportunities to go through conflict and work with different personalities, and that's really helped in the work setting, understanding people that have different perspectives and working with them.
Yeah, you just have to avoid calling them kids, but I know exactly, right? We sometimes sort of feel that way. Yeah, so there are lots of ways we do this. Now, I want to talk about, we're talking about work and family. Does anybody else have any responsibilities outside of work and family? Yeah, tell me.
Got called as primary president.
Oh my goodness, bless your heart.
Board, and it's really hard.
Bless your heart, good for you.
1 week I had 4 meetings, all meetings.
Okay, so church callings, right? What else? What other kinds of responsibilities do we have?
I'm on my HOA board.
Oh, okay, your HOA board, okay.
My mom has stage 4 cancer.
So being a caregiver of an extended family. Excellent example. Bless you in that. Other examples of things that you're doing, please.
I mean, I'm a student and I'm starting a graduate program, so this all a student for a while.
Yeah,
I still have a husband to take care of, so.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the thing is, if all we had to worry about, this work family, I mean, that sounds complicated enough, but we're going to add a whole bunch of other things to that, right? We're going to add church callings. We're concerned about our neighbors, right? We feel some sense, maybe to our community. Maybe we volunteer some. The list goes on, and for each of us, it's a little bit different. So one of the things we try to do is sort of avoid the term work family anymore, because it just doesn't encompass everything we do. So we look instead of work life. So the title of this is Managing Work-Life Integration. There's an author, her name is Ellen Kosick, who's a researcher in this area, and she suggests that we generally do it 3 different ways. So I'm going to describe them, and I want you to think about who you are, how you do this. The first one she calls separators. Think of it in silos. I go to work, 8 to 5. I turn off, I don't talk to my family, I don't do anything, I just do my work. And then as soon as I'm done, it's sort of like the Mr. Rogers, right? I'm going to take off the jacket or whatever. I come home, and now I'm just going to be with my family. And never the twain shall mix, right? That's a separator. So just by a raise of hands, how many of you see yourself as kind of a separator? Okay? And tell me, are there any of you that wish you were a separator? Okay, what's good about being a separator from any of you, either those that do it or those that would like to do it? What's good about separate? Hey, how are you doing, Alex?
So my work pays me for 40 hours a week, that's all they're getting from me, and then I go home and it's just me. So it's helpful to not really have to worry about, oh, I'm gonna have this at night.
So it gives you a chance to kind of turn off a little bit. Yeah, excellent. What else, please?
Total focus with that.
Yeah, you can give 100%, right, to whatever it is you're doing. Any other thoughts? Why this seems like a good.
I'm not that way. I was just gonna give the example of my father. He never talked about work at home. I knew what he was. I knew he did something in mines and he did something with copper. I never knew exactly what he did because he wouldn't bring it home.
Mm-hmm.
He would never take phone calls from home. He'd just say, email me if you need something, but I'm home on the weekends and you cannot just reach out to me. And sometimes he would take us to like where he would work and then he would explain, but that was it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate
So that way.
I had my attention, time for me, like give me attention, I'm your daughter. But I kind of at the same time, I wanted to know more about what he did. Like now that I'm older, I'm like, wow, you did a lot of things. Like you were really cool. But yeah, I wish.
But you didn't know. Okay, okay. Let's talk about integrators. Integrators sort of weave back and forth. It doesn't mean that they don't work 8 to 5 and go home and are with their family, but it's not uncommon for them to be doing some family things during work time and work things during family time. And they just are constantly sort of weaving. I like the term weaving rather than integrator but that's just me. But it's that idea of kind of back and forth. How many of you would consider yourself as integrators? And how many of you wish you weren't? What's the problem with integrators or integrating? Again, I don't really like that term, but that's her term, so
Well,
please.
I run a business out of my home, and I'm an adjunct here, but I don't have an office.
Mm.
So a lot of my work's at home. But I have a designated area in my family room, 'cause my family room's pretty big, and I can work and do things. But sometimes I wish I had it more separated.
Okay.
But just because there's pluses and minuses.
Yeah,
to both.
yeah. Other thoughts, please.
I think I learned this from my dad, but sometimes I stress out my family by constantly bringing
Because then they hear all about it, or they,
that's all I can talk about.
right. Yeah. Please.
So on the plus side, I can be completely responsive to both worlds throughout the day, and that's nice. On the downside, I'm constantly present in both worlds, and therefore stressed out double.
Yeah, and people think it's a claim to fame when they multitask, that like that's a fantastic thing. Research is pretty clear that people don't multitask very well. That it takes you longer, or you don't do as good of a job. You can't do it at the same level. So I always tell people, multitasking is fine as long as you acknowledge it's not going to be that good. And some things we can do that, right? It doesn't have to be that good. And that's okay, but we have to sort of acknowledge that. So there might be some of that. Cyclers, the third one, is someone who, and in her mind, it's much more over-encompassing. Like for 3 weeks, I might be focused completely on work, and for, then I go on vacation and I'm just with my family, right? And the people that do cyclers, they usually it's around deadlines, about big things, projects that are going on in the workplace, and they feel like they give 150%, but they'll make it up in those 2 weeks or whatever that they have down the road. And so they can kind of say to themselves, I'm not seeing my family for 3 weeks, but it's okay, I'm going to make it up to them down there. Any of you cyclers? And how does that work for you?
Well, so I'm on a one-year assignment, and the hard part is you miss out on a lot of the day-to-day things.
Yeah. So it's a little bit tough, huh? Yeah. So none of these are perfect. And it doesn't really matter which one you do, generally, except for you, right? So some people are better at others. Some things work better for others than others do. Sorry, I just said that wrong. So if you might feel perfectly comfortable being a separator, and that's how you need to live your life. I know some people that's not only they do it and they want it, and that feels really good to them. And others really, really do and want to be an integrator. Doesn't really matter unless you're here and you want to be somewhere else. That's when it gets to be a problem. Because you already have, remember all the stuff we talked about, the guilt, all those kind of feelings. Now you've got even more guilt because you say to yourself, I should be doing it differently. There's no right way, so we have to be really clear about that. There's no right way to do it. You've got to figure out what's going to work for you. I'm going to skip this. Well, I'm going to talk about this very briefly. One of the things we're seeing is a lot of organizations are trying to help us sort of integrate this. It can be good and bad. Back in the, probably in the early 2000s, I don't know what we call that decade, people started offering things like you can get your laundry done at work, your dry cleaning done. You can order dinners. You can order flowers for your spouse to be sent to their home for your anniversary. They were offering all these kinds of things. Now that sounds kind of good, but the end result was, anybody know? Yeah, you stayed at work longer. So the end result was, it actually worked out really well for them, not so well for the rest of us, right? But there are things that organizations are doing that help us to sort of integrate our work and family life in whatever way we want to do it. So we can look at, these are just a partial list of things that organizations are doing. What I want to talk about is how we can actually manage. What are some steps? Now I've looked at lots of research on this, lots of studies, and sort of boiled it down to a list that I think makes sense. Some of the things on the list you're going to say, that wouldn't work for me, and that's okay. But I hope that there's something on the list that you say, that might be helpful for me. So first, This should be no surprise. You've got to prioritize. And when we prioritize, that means not just saying, oh, I'm going to say something, my family is really important to me. It's actually doing, right? Or saying, my work is really important to me, but I'm not following through. So prioritizing is not just saying, it's actually doing. And I think we have a tendency to just think about the saying part, and that's not good enough. So it falls into the next one, which is planning. When we had all 8 of our children at home, we had a whiteboard that was probably about this size, that we divided into 8 boxes. And there was a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and a to-do list. And every week we wrote down our schedule. We had to. The problem, which worked fantastic, the problem now that we're empty nesters, we don't have to because it doesn't seem that complicated, but we get caught all the time. My husband will say, you didn't tell me we were doing that tonight. Oh, sorry, or vice versa, right? So one of the things that we've found is we still have to plan. So every Sunday evening, we sit down and say, is anything coming up this week? I have to do that for myself, just to say, what's going on? I've got, my mother lives here, who's 87 years old, lives here in Orem. I have siblings here. There are some responsibilities to, my mother's incredibly vigorous, she drives, she does all those kind of things. But there's still some care, and so there's some things, some responsibilities there. I need to make sure I'm connecting with her, with my siblings. So there's a lot of ways we do this, but we need to plan. We need to figure out, and planning should follow our priorities. Years ago, I used to have my students keep track of their time management, and I would have them, as the week progressed, write down everything they did in 15-minute increments, and then come back to class the next week and we'd talk about it. And then I'd give them the same assignment, but I'd say first, I want you to fill in what you're going to do. And then just, if there's any changes, make the changes. And then we talked about it after. Well, it's no surprise, right? We know this. We're not very good at it, but we know this. We know that if we plan, we're actually going to get things done. If we don't plan, we just don't get as much done. Unless you're like super, which is not what I am. So, the third one is practice. Now this might seem sort of odd, but nobody's perfect at this. Nobody's born at being good at managing all this. And we have all these things coming at us constantly that sort of pull us off, pull us one way or the other. And it changes all the time. Just like we raised our hands and everybody's had failures, you are going to have failures. I'm just going to, you have to know that and know it's okay. We have to practice, because if we don't take the first step, we're not going to get anywhere. Just like when you were a young child and your mother made you practice the piano, or you were into sports and you had to practice sports. The only way we get good at this is if we practice, and practice regularly. Again, some things are going to work for us. Your friend or whatever might say, hey, I've got this really great idea, this works for me. I've had people tell me about like meal planning and all kinds of things, because they realize I need help in this area. And so they tell me all these great ideas. Some of them don't work for me, and that's okay. I try it, and I decide not to. But we need to practice. The third one, I think, is really important. I think we're here on earth to find joy, right? We know that. Not everything's going to be fun. I'm still going back to, is it Katie?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still going back to the 2-year-old throwing up every day. So I'm not sure how to do that for you, but.
You got it, in-home daycare.
Okay, well, there you go. There you go. That's it. Exactly. See? But we need to enjoy the process. I have, as I mentioned, I've got 12 grandchildren, and I have, my daughters will call me and say, oh, this is so hard, whatever stage. And it doesn't, my grandkids are from, 2 months to 6 years. So I'm hearing all kinds of things. And in my mind, I'm like, enjoy it, because it'll go by so fast, and suddenly all that's gone. And they're like, I can't wait. And I say, I know, but enjoy it. So whatever you're at, whatever you're doing, whatever stage you're at, enjoy the process. Enjoy what you're doing. Because if you're waiting for the next thing to happen, whether it's you're waiting to finish your degree, You're waiting for children to grow up. You're waiting for, that job promotion. You're waiting for whatever. You're going to miss out on opportunities. So enjoy the process as you go through it. Catherine.
I'd add that you may have a continued perspective, and I think being an older person and being LDS, I've found as challenges come up now, a thought that will often come in my mind is, I'm practicing to be like Heavenly Mother.
Oh, aren't you good?
Somehow we're going to learn to do all of this. We are going to.
Yeah.
And that positive perspective has really helped.
I think that's fabulous. That's an excellent reminder. No, it's not on my list. I'm going to have to remember that. I'm going to kind of go with that for a minute, though. Some of you have probably heard me share this before. My mother was a quilter. And for any of you, and I'm not, so it didn't pass down in any way, shape, or form. But I remember as a young girl laying on the ground looking up at the quilts. Do you know what I'm talking about? Any of you done this yourself? And I remember seeing the knots and the strands and going in crazy directions and the kind of a muddle. What in the world's going on there? But I kind of was fascinated by it. And so I'd look at that and think, I wonder what it looks like, because it seems so crazy right now. And then, of course, I'd get up, stand up, and look down at it, and the pattern made total sense. One of the things I've found in life is we're probably on the ground looking at a muddle. We're looking at a mess. Strands going everywhere, knots that don't even seem to make sense, colors that don't make sense, pathways that don't make sense. And it's not until we look at it from above. And sometimes that comes with age. I'm 57 years old. I get now why some things have happened to me. But I think some of it's not going to come till eternities. We're going to go, oh, now this makes sense. So I do think having that different perspective helps us to kind of see that it will work out in some way. Every single time something really hard and really tough has happened in my life, at the end, there's a lesson learned. I'm a better person if I approached it in the right way because of that. It's painstakingly difficult to wait, though, when I'm in the middle of it. I want to know right now, how's this going to get fixed? What do I need to do? Let's fix it. But it just doesn't happen that way. So excellent reminder, Catherine. Thank you. Someone talked about being present. One of the things that I think is really important is figure out what that means to be present. Bonnie and I have had this experience, but recently we were both made department chairs in the college. And I don't think I knew exactly how much time it would take, which is probably good. That's why they ask. But I was sitting. I mentioned we're empty nesters. I was sitting at home, and I had my computer out, and I was responding to emails. I'm sitting next to my husband, and I'm responding to emails, and kind of feeling like isn't this great? We're spending this quality time together. I know. It doesn't make sense at all, but at the moment it seemed to make sense. And so I'm working on my computer, and he looked over at me and said, "Is this what the next few years is going to be like?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, is it?" So I still have to answer emails, but I'm learning to try to figure out what that means, how I can do that in a way that isn't encroaching in on my family time, or whatever that time might be. I know a lot of people that have a basket in their kitchen where all cellular devices, iPads, phones, whatever, go in. Anytime you walk in the kitchen, you cannot have a cell phone. And that, these are people that have a dining room and a kitchen sort of combination. They said wonderful conversations happen without our cell phones, right? We know there's great technology, there's great benefit. We all know that there can be a big cost. So we have to be a little careful about that. Now, I don't know how that works in your families. Actually, we do it. We only have adults, and when they come home, all our kids are adults. When they come home, we tell them they can't have the cell phones at the table. I teach here on campus. I don't let my students use their computers when I'm teaching a class. And they'll say, oh, but I have to take notes. And I say, you know what? I'm not that wise. Trust me, you'll be fine. Because what happens is learning is an active activity. It needs active participation. And actually being on our cell phones or our computers takes away that piece. So I don't know what that means for you to be present, but I'd encourage you to figure out how to do that. I've worked all my life. I've had kids that have called me in the middle of the day for whatever reason, and I need to respond to them. But I also have to figure out that when I'm at work, I owe it to my organization to make sure I'm present. So again, think what that is for you, but think about being present. I think this is absolutely critical. Find supportive people. Surround yourself with supportive people. Much of my research is on social support and about the difference that makes when I feel supported, whether it's in the workplace or whether in my home. I'm going to share an example, a story that I just heard from someone. I'm very cryptic about it for a purpose, but someone was just telling me that they had a male, and he said, I have an extremely supportive spouse who looks for ways to help me achieve my dreams. And I want to do the same for her. And this person happens to have a twin brother who has not been as fortunate. And he was comparing the two trajectories of their lives and said he's really struggled in lots of different ways. And this person said, I think it's because I've surrounded myself with supportive people. Why do we not do this? I mean, it seems to make sense, but some of us end up, for whatever reason, in relationships and situations where we have people who do us harm. Get yourself out of harm's way. Find someone who can be supportive to you. And it may not be, nobody's got a perfect workplace, I get that. Nobody's got a perfect family, I get that too. But if you need support, find it somewhere else then, if you're not getting it there. I believe that we are destined for greatness. But the only way we're going to get to that greatness is if we have people who are helping us along the way. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, yeah, so-and-so, and you're thinking of a list of people who have made a difference in your life. That's what we need. We all need that. We're social creatures. We need that support. And I think for many of us, we need to bounce ideas off people. We need to feel better about things. So we need to have someone to talk to. Take care of your physical needs. Now, this means, no surprise here, get sleep, eat, exercise, right? These are the basics. We know this, and everybody knows this. Nobody looks at this list and say, wow, nobody ever told me I was supposed to be sleeping. We know this, but we're awful at this. And I think women are worse than men, maybe. I don't know. Maybe because we feel like we've got all these other things we do that we let care for ourselves slide. But what I found is caring for myself makes me a nicer person. And trust me, nobody wants the angry Lori. We want the nice Lori. So why would I not do that? But we feel sort of guilty on doing that. Alec, you were going to say, Alex?
With this, I have a legitimately in your class for doing something like this with the reminder that you have to take time to plan to do something as simple as eat. And that saved me that semester because
See?
everything, like if you're not taking care of the physical, none of the rest of it matters.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. See, I'd made a difference in someone's life. I love that. And we all know. You know where you're at. I love when people say, I only need 3 hours of sleep a night. I'm sorry. That's not good enough. You may be able to subsist, whatever, barely survive, but most of us need more. And I think we all need to do better here. Change of life, different stages of life, I realize all those kinds of things. But think about, make sure you're taking care of it for yourself. And this might just be going for a walk, getting away, doing something. Again, taking care of the physical. And the last one is not as pleasant, but just persevere. there are going to be hard times. And sometimes you can't do it. You can't change hard times. You just have to make it through. Now, this could be that you have a really crummy job, and if I can just wait 6 more months, something better is going to come along. It might be that you have a young baby who's got colic and is awake all night, and you think, I'm going to get some sleep in about a year. And sometimes that's all you can do. But remember that you can also rely on supportive people. If you have something crazy going on in your life, get some help. Talk to someone. I've found people are more than happy to reach out, stretch out, because they want to make a difference. Oh man, I've got to. So this is my list. And again, it's a list that through lots of research, through lots of studies, through lots of things, personal experience. It may not be your list, though, and that's okay. But think of some ways that you can sort of manage that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about guilt for a second. And I'm going to share with you, this is a talk by Elder Oaks from back in 1992. And he talked about things that, it's just like its title, our strengths can be our downfalls. And let me share what he talked about. He said that sometimes we wear our busyness as a badge of honor. Now, I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands. How many of you have ever done that? But Facebook is full of this, right? Someone said, oh my gosh, I did this, I ran the kids, wow, I'm pretty cool. We have to be careful about this. And what he suggested, he's not saying don't accept a church calling, but if we wear this as a badge of honor, like, I am so busy, I don't even have time for my family. He says that's a problem. So, he talks about accomplishment. Again, we should be having accomplishments, but if we wear that as sort of, again, a badge of honor and pride, it becomes a prideful thing, neglect of family duties. One of the examples in inordinate church service that he uses that also neglects family is there was a young man in a high council years and years ago, and this high counselor said, I have 100% high attendance at high council meetings, whatever. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently that was, so he said, I've had 100% the whole time I've been on the high council. And at the time, Elder Oaks was the stake president. He said, oh, that's great. And he said, yeah, one time I had to tell my boss, I asked my boss if I could go, and he said, no, I need you to work late, so I called in sick because I didn't want to miss my high council meeting because I was 100%. And he was surprised when Elder Oaks said, so you lied? And suggested that maybe that wasn't the right thing. Sometimes we get our goals mixed up a little bit, a little crazy. Again, this example of a tense focus on goals. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be setting goals. But if we set goals to the extent that they end up hurting us or someone else, and instead of, we forget what the real purpose is. A desire to be led in all things. He talked about people who are very good in the church about wanting to follow the prophet, about wanting to follow whoever to make decisions, but he said, you're also an adult. You need to make choices. You need to make decisions. You shouldn't be calling people all the time and saying, hey, what do I do for such and such? And I love gospel hobbies. Remember, I think it was Elder Packer years and years and years ago, talked about playing the piano. Do you remember this? Or I'm way older, apparently, than the rest of you. He talked about playing the piano, and he talked about specifically about welfare. Not welfare. Food storage, sorry, couldn't think of the word. Food storage. And he said some people play that note over and over and over again. And all those keys in the piano are going unused. And he used that as the gospel. There's a beautiful harmony of the keyboard and all of the aspects of the gospel. We tend to, maybe it's something we do really well, but focus our attention on one, and he reminded us not to. I'm going to very quickly share these last two slides with you. This is from a talk from President Uchtdorf, now Elder Uchtdorf, I guess I was right. If you remember this talk it's called Of Regrets and Resolutions, fantastic talk. There was a study of a nurse that was, she worked with people at the end of life, terminal care, and she would ask people, what do you regret? And these are the 3 things that people said. I wish I'd spent more time with the people I love. I wish I had lived up to my potential, and I wish I had let myself be happier. Now, this is going to be no surprise. But he said, so then we should resolve to spend more time with the people we love, try to be the person that God wants us to be, and the third is try to find happiness regardless of my circumstance. And he shared the talk of him and his wife Harriet riding bikes, if you remember this. They're riding bikes, and he's trying to race her, and she's like, what are you doing? We're just out for a bike ride. And he's like, oh, let's see who gets there first. Why are we doing that? Why aren't we just enjoying the opportunity? Finding happiness now as you look at things that go by. And this is no surprise. Remember the story that he tells of the 3 sisters, sad, glad, mad. So through all of this, I think the most important thing is this. Figure out how to spend time with the people you love. Regardless of what our responsibilities are outside the home, make sure that you're making time for the people you love in whatever way. We are here on earth to become the person that Heavenly Father wants us to be. Find out what that is. Make the right choices. Prepare. I shouldn't just say it to you. We should all be preparing ourselves to be ready for whatever He has in store for us. And that's not easy, but I think we need to do it. And the last is find happiness. Be happy. Don't wear our unhappiness or our busyness as a badge of honor, but instead we should be spreading joy and happiness. And I believe that's an important part of why we're here. And thank you very much for this opportunity to visit with you. If you have other questions, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. Thank you very much.